After 7 years of trying to conceive, an excited mom-to-be tragically suffered a brain aneurysm that left her comatose weeks before her due date. 5 weeks after her son's birth, her husband laid him on her chest, and she began to sob. It took Sean and Heather Brown 7 years of trying before they finally got a positive pregnancy test. It was such a surreal moment for them that even though Heather suffered from high blood pressure at the time, she just couldn't keep still. "We wanted this so badly," Sean admitted. Throughout the early years of their marriage, Sean and Heather tried so hard to have children. They had met through a mutual friend who suggested they go on a blind date. Sean wasn't into the idea, but he eventually gave it a try by giving Heather a call the week after the suggestion. They met over dinner, and since then, they've been inseparable. They talked for hours, and within a month, they moved in with one another. A year later, they got married and started to try for children. "I could tell she was going to be a great mom. She was a natural with kids," Sean longingly said about his wife. After 7 years, they were finally going to become parents. It was something they never thought would come because doctors used to tell them that Heather was infertile. While Heather was pregnant, Sean was deployed to Afghanistan. During Heather's 34-week mark, however, he got a frantic email from one of Heather's aunts, telling him that something went wrong. Heather had a brain aneurysm and was in a coma. Sean did all he could to get home, hitchhiking on different planes just to make it to the hospital. Ultimately, it took him 3 days of flying until he reached his hometown. A police escort brought him to the hospital, and he was in tears when he saw his son for the first time. 5 weeks later, while Sean and their newborn son John were already settled at home, they decided to take a trip to the hospital. Heather was still confined, where she was being observed for her brain aneurysm. He narrated the scene through a Facebook post, which was written from John's perspective. Sean wrote that they visited the hospital without knowing how special the day would be. They entered Heather's room, where Sean whispered into her ear to meet her son. At the time, Heather had not been responsive for 5 weeks. When their son was gently placed beside her, she opened her mouth and cried. Sean knew how hard Heather was trying to open her eyes to see her son for the very first time. However, his touch alone was enough to get a reaction out of her. From staying beside her, Sean then moved their son to her chest, and she reacted again, this time sobbing. She was finally holding her own son. She had always wanted to be a mother, and this moment was something she had been longing for. After some time, Sean moved their son back beside Heather. He took Heather's finger and placed it inside their son's little hand, and he squeezed it as tight as he could. Again, Heather began to cry. Since that day in 2012, Heather has not yet woken up. However, she has gone home and is in stable condition. In fact, 2 years after giving birth, she was heard saying John's name multiple times one day. Sean left his job in the military and instead worked 2 jobs near home in order to raise John and care for Heather. He created a Facebook page to update their 1.2 million followers on her status and to constantly ask for prayers. Until recently, Sean decided to slowly let go of the page for his own peace of mind and healing. The devoted husband clarified that he remains married to Heather and has not been open to dating other people. Their darling son John is already 10 years old and is the perfect combination of his mom and dad.